Absolutely useless. The words echoed through our upscale suburban home as my mother threw my college acceptance letter in my face. NYU? For finance? What a waste of money. I stood in our pristine kitchen, watching the letter flutter to the marble floor, my dreams of studying finance scattered like confetti at my feet. At 18, I had thought getting into one of the best business schools in the country would finally make my parents proud. I was wrong. Emma. My father's cold voice cut through the air. We've discussed this. You're going to work at the restaurant like your sister Catherine. College is an unnecessary expense for someone like you. Someone like me. Those words had defined my entire existence in the Morrison family. Catherine, my older sister, was the golden child, the one who had dutifully followed our parents' path into the family's chain of high-end restaurants. And me. I was the dreamer who dared to want something different. But I got a partial scholarship, I protested, picking up the crumpled letter. I've been saving from my part-time job. I can make this work. My mother laughed, that sharp, dismissive sound I'd grown to hate. Your little bookkeeping job at that tiny bank? Please. Catherine made more in tips last month than you make in a year. What they didn't know was that my little bookkeeping job at First Metro Bank had taught me more about finance than they could imagine. While they saw me filing papers and answering phones, I was absorbing everything about banking, investments, and the power of money. I'm going, I said quietly, but firmly, whether you support me or not. My father's face turned that dangerous shade of red I knew too well. If you walk out that door, don't expect any help from us. Ever. Richard, my mother touched his arm, her voice suddenly honey-sweet and poisonous. Maybe we're approaching this wrong. Emma, darling, think about it. Catherine is already managing 2 restaurants. In a few years, she could be running the whole chain. But you, what can you do with a finance degree? I looked at them both. Really looked at them. My mother in her designer clothes, my father with his expensive watch. Both of them so sure they knew what was best for everyone. They'd built their restaurant empire from nothing true, but they'd stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped seeing possibilities beyond their own narrow view of success. I can build something of my own, I answered. The slap came so fast, I didn't see it coming. My mother's hand left a stinging impression on my cheek. Ungrateful child, after everything we'd given you. Given me? I touched my burning face. What exactly have you given me except constant criticism and comparisons to Catherine? G-E-T-L-U-T. My mother screamed, her perfectly maintained facade cracking completely. If you're so sure you can make it on your own, then go. Don't come crawling back when you fail. My father stood silent, his face stone. Behind him, I saw Catherine in the doorway, watching with a mixture of shock and smug satisfaction. I walked upstairs to my room, pulled out the bag I'd packed weeks ago, just in case this day came, and grabbed the small lockbox where I'd been storing my savings. 4 years of working every spare hour, saving every penny, preparing for this moment. When I came back downstairs, my mother was crying dramatically while my father comforted her. Catherine still stood in the doorway, now openly smirking. You'll regret this, she said softly as I passed. Nobody makes it without family backing them up. I paused at the front door, looking back at my so-called family one last time. You're wrong, and someday I'll prove it. That night, I checked into a small hotel near the bank where I worked. My manager, Mr. Harrison, had always seen something in me that my family missed. When I told him what happened, he didn't hesitate. The bank has a program, he said, for promising employees who want to further their education. Full tuition reimbursement in exchange for working here during school and 2 years after graduation. Are you interested? Was I interested? It was better than anything I had hoped for. Yes, I said firmly. I'm very interested. What my family didn't know, what they had never bothered to learn, was that I had already been taking online finance courses through the bank's training program. I had certifications in investment banking, risk management, and financial analysis. My little bookkeeping job had given me access to a world of knowledge they couldn't imagine. The next 4 years passed in a blur of classes, work, and relentless self-improvement. While Catherine posted photos of herself at restaurant openings and industry parties, I was learning how banks really worked, how money moved, how power was built. I graduated from NYU summa cum laude, with job offers from top investment firms. But I stayed at First Metro Bank, working my way up from department to department. I learned everything about bank operations, from loans to acquisitions. 10 years after my parents threw me out, I founded my own investment company, Phoenix Financial. We specialized in buying struggling banks, restructuring them, and turning them into profitable powerhouses. My family's name and their precious restaurants meant nothing in the world I now inhabited. 5 years after that, an opportunity arose that I couldn't resist. First Commonwealth Bank, my parents' primary lender, was struggling. Their stock was down, their leadership was weak, and they were ripe for takeover. I sat in my corner office, looking at the acquisition proposal on my desk. My parents had no idea that their loyal family bank was about to become mine. They had no idea that their daughter, the one they'd thrown away as useless, now controlled billions in assets. They would find out soon enough. According to the reports, the Morrison Restaurant Group had several large loans coming due. Loans they were struggling to pay thanks to Catherine's mismanagement and their own refusal to modernize. Soon, they would come begging for extensions, for better terms, for mercy from a bank they thought they knew. Instead, they would find me. I picked up the phone and dialed my chief operating officer. Janet, execute Project Homecoming. It's time to buy First Commonwealth Bank. The wheel had turned full circle. The useless daughter they'd thrown away was about to become their bank's owner. And unlike them, I understood exactly how to use that power. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out that crumpled NYU acceptance letter, the one I'd retrieved from the floor 15 years ago. I'd kept it as a reminder of where I started. Now it would serve as a reminder of how far I'd come. And my family? They were about to learn that sometimes the people you dismiss as useless turn out to be the most powerful of all. The takeover of First Commonwealth Bank went exactly as planned. The press announcement hit the morning news. Phoenix Financial acquires First Commonwealth in $2.8 billion deal. My parents wouldn't understand the significance yet. They never read the financial news. But they would soon enough. I sat in my new office at First Commonwealth's headquarters, reviewing their loan portfolio. The Morrison Restaurant Group's files lay open on my desk. 6 restaurants struggling with debt, outdated business models, and declining profits. My sister Catherine's signature was on most of the recent documents, each one showing increasingly desperate attempts to secure more funding. Ms. Williams? My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Catherine Morrison is here for her 2 p.m. meeting about the loan extensions. I smiled, remembering my sister's last words to me 15 years ago. Send her in. Catherine strutted in, designer heels clicking on the marble floor. She hadn't changed much, still perfectly groomed, still radiating that air of entitled confidence. She stopped short when she saw me, her perfectly maintained facade cracking. "Emma?" she whispered, then quickly recovered. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Catherine." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss." If this is some kind of joke, she remained standing, clutching her expensive handbag like a shield. "No joke." I opened the Morrison Group's file. "I see you're here to discuss extending the loans on restaurants 3 through 6. They're significantly underwater, aren't they?" The color drained from her face. You work here?" "Actually," I smiled, "I own the bank. Phoenix Financial completed the acquisition this morning. Didn't you read the news?" She sank into the chair, her legs seemingly giving out. "That's impossible. You're nothing. You ran away." "I didn't run away, Catherine. I built something. Something much bigger than a chain of overpriced restaurants." I pulled out the latest financial reports. "Speaking of which, let's discuss these numbers. They're quite concerning." "These meetings are supposed to be with Mr. Anderson," she protested weakly. "Mr. Anderson retired this morning. All major loan decisions now go through me." I studied my sister's face as the reality of her situation sank in. "You're 3 months behind on payments for 4 locations. Your revenue is down 40% year over year. And," I pulled out another document, "you've been hiding losses from our loan officers." "That's fraud, Catherine." She straightened in her chair, trying to summon her old arrogance. "You wouldn't dare call in our loans. We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Isn't that what you said the night I left? Nobody makes it without family backing them up." "Well, I did make it. And now your family's financial future depends on my decisions." "I'll tell Mom and Dad," she threatened. "They won't stand for this." "Please do." I handed her a business card. "In fact, I'd like all of you to come to a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. We need to discuss the future of the Morrison Restaurant Group." Catherine stood up, shaking with rage. "You planned this. All these years, you were just waiting for revenge." "No, Catherine. I built an empire while you were coasting on our parents' success. The fact that I now control your loans? That's just poetic justice." After she stormed out, I called my assistant. "Janet, when my parents arrive tomorrow, have security bring them directly to the boardroom. I think it's time for a proper family reunion." That evening, my phone exploded with messages. Catherine had clearly run straight to our parents. "Mom, how dare you? After everything we did for you." "Dad, this is unacceptable. We'll take our business elsewhere." "Catherine, you'll regret this. Nobody treats us this way." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I reviewed the restructuring plan I'd prepared for their restaurants. They had 2 choices: accept my terms and save their business, or refuse and lose everything. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a Tom Ford suit that cost more than 3 months of Catherine's salary. The boardroom windows offer a sweeping view of the city, my city now, in many ways. At exactly 9 a.m., the doors opened. My parents walked in, followed by Catherine. They stopped short when they saw me standing at the head of the table. "Good morning," I said calmly. "Please, sit down." "Emma?" My father's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "What is the meaning of this?" "This," I gestured to the documents laid out before each place, "is a meeting to discuss the future of your company. Your very troubled company." "We'll take our business to another bank," my mother snapped. "With your credit history? Your fraudulent reporting?" I picked up a file. "No bank in the city will touch you. especially after I filed these discrepancy reports with the regulatory board. Catherine went pale. She knew exactly what those reports contained. Every fake number, every hidden loss, every lie she told to keep the loans flowing. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Try me." I sat down, opened the main proposal. "However, I'm prepared to offer you a deal. One that will save your restaurants and your reputation." My father's face had turned that dangerous shade of red again. "You think you can blackmail us? Your own family?" "Blackmail?" I raised an eyebrow. "No, I'm offering you a business solution. The same kind I've offered to dozens of other failing companies. The fact that you're my family doesn't change the numbers." I pushed copies of the proposal across the table. Phoenix Financial will assume control of 51% of the Morrison Restaurant Group. We'll inject new capital, modernize your operations, and restructure your debt. In return, you'll step down from day-to-day management. Step down. My mother's voice rose to a shriek. "This is our company." "Not anymore," I replied calmly. "Right now. It's a failing company drowning in debt. I'm offering you a chance to save what's left." Catherine was frantically flipping through the proposal. This would make you our boss." "Yes," I agreed. "Ironic, isn't it? The useless daughter you kicked out now controls your financial future." My father stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. "You ungrateful little." "Careful," I cut him off. "Remember where you are. Remember who owns this building, this bank, and soon, your restaurants." He froze, finally seeing me clearly. Not as his disappointing younger daughter, but as the powerful executive I'd become. "Why?" my mother asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why do this to us?" I stood up slowly, placed my hands on the table. "Because 15 years ago, you threw me away like I was nothing. You were so sure I would fail without your support. Instead, I built something greater than anything you could imagine." I walked to the window, looked out at the city. "Your choice is simple. Accept my offer and save your legacy, or refuse and lose everything. You have until the end of business today to decide." "You can't do this," Catherine protested weakly. I turned back to them, smiled coldly. "I already have. The papers are drawn up. The board is waiting for your response. The only question is whether you're smart enough to take the deal." As they sat there, staring at the documents that would change everything, I thought about that night 15 years ago, about the daughter they'd thrown away as useless, about how power shifts when you least expect it. "One more thing," I added as I walked to the door. "When you make your decision, remember this. I learned everything I know about business by watching you. The only difference is, I learned from your mistakes instead of repeating them." I left them there, surrounded by papers that proved just how far their useless daughter had come. The wheel had turned full circle, and now they had to choose: accept my authority or lose everything they'd built. Either way, I had already won. They signed the papers at 4:59 p.m. I watched from my office as my father's hand trembled slightly, signing away control of the empire he built. My mother dabbed at her eyes with an expensive handkerchief while Catherine stared blankly at the wall, her perfect world completely shattered. "Congratulations," my lawyer said smoothly, gathering the documents. "Phoenix Financial is now the majority owner of the Morrison Restaurant Group." "What happens now?" my father asked, his voice hollow. I stood up from behind my desk. "Now we save your company, whether you like it or not." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. I brought in my own management team to audit every aspect of the restaurant chain. The results were worse than even I had expected. They've been operating on an outdated business model for years, Janet reported, spreading spreadsheets across my desk. No online presence, no modern marketing, no adaptation to changing customer preferences. It's like they're stuck in 1995. Catherine's been hiding the real numbers, my CFO added. They're not just underwater, they're drowning. Without our intervention, they would have collapsed within 6 months. I nodded, unsurprised. My sister had always been better at appearances than actual management. Start the restructuring. Full modernization, complete menu overhaul, new marketing strategy, and schedule a full board meeting for next week. The board meeting was the first time I'd seen my family since they signed the papers. They sat at the far end of the table, looking small and defeated. Catherine had lost her designer polish. There were shadows under her eyes, and her clothes looked rumpled. The Morrison Restaurant Group is fundamentally sound, I began, standing at the head of the table. The brand has value, the locations are prime, and there's a loyal customer base. The problem isn't the business, it's how it's been run. I clicked through slides showing the changes we planned. Modern point-of-sale systems, updated menus focusing on local ingredients and current food trends, a robust online ordering platform, and a complete marketing overhaul. This isn't what our customers want, my father interrupted. They come to us for traditional. Your customers are leaving. I cut him off. Sales have dropped 40% in 3 years. The only thing keeping you afloat was Catherine's creative accounting, and that stops now. Catherine flinched. I was trying to save us. You were hiding the truth. I corrected her, just like you've all been doing for years. Well, that ends today. I laid out the new management structure. My team would handle operations, finance, and marketing. My family would retain ceremonial positions, the face of the brand, but with no real power. You're destroying everything we built, my mother whispered. No, I replied calmly. I'm saving it. You just can't see that yet. The changes weren't easy. My parents fought every modernization attempt. Catherine sulked in her new role as brand ambassador, stripped of any real authority. But slowly, inevitably, the numbers began to turn around. 3 months after the takeover, sales increased for the first time in years. 6 months in, we opened our first new location, a modern concept restaurant that blended the Morrison tradition with contemporary dining trends. It was an immediate success. 1 year to the day after I took control, I called another family meeting. This time in the flagship restaurant, after hours. The numbers speak for themselves, I said, handing out the latest reports. Revenue is up 60%. Customer satisfaction has increased by 45%. The Morrison Restaurant Group is not just surviving, it's thriving. My father studied the reports with grudging admiration. Even he couldn't deny the turnaround. Why? Catherine asked suddenly. Why save us at all? You could have let us fail, after how we treated you. I walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. Because success isn't about revenge. It's about proving something to yourself, not others. We were wrong, my mother said quietly. It was the first time I'd ever heard her admit a mistake. About you, about everything. I turned back to them. Yes, you were. But that's not why I did this. Then why? My father asked. Because 15 years ago, you threw away a daughter you thought was useless. Instead of destroying me, it made me stronger. I built something bigger than you could imagine. And now, I smiled slightly. Now I'm teaching you how to build something too. Catherine stood up, straightened her shoulders. Teach me. At our surprised looks, she continued, I mean it. Everything I thought I knew about business was wrong. I want to learn. Really learn, not just pretend. I studied my sister, seeing something new in her eyes, humility, and maybe a spark of real ambition. Okay, I said finally. Be in my office tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll start with basic financial analysis, real numbers this time, not creative accounting. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. As the business transformed, so did my family. Catherine threw herself into learning, showing a genuine talent for marketing when she wasn't trying to fake success. My father, freed from day-to-day management, became a valuable brand ambassador, telling the story of our restaurant's evolution. Even my mother found a role, using her social connections to build partnerships with local suppliers and charities. 1 year and 6 months after the takeover, we sat in my office for a different kind of meeting. The board has reviewed your performance, I told them. Based on the results, we're prepared to adjust the management structure. You're giving us back control? My father asked hopefully. No, I smiled. But I am offering you real positions in the company, based on merit, not family ties. Catherine, you've shown remarkable growth in marketing. Dad, your community outreach program has been incredibly successful. Mom, your supplier relations program has cut our costs by 15%. I handed them each a folder. These are your new contracts. Real positions, real responsibilities, real accountability. Your choice if you want to accept them. They opened the folders silently. Catherine's eyes widened at her new title, Vice President of Brand Development. Why now? She asked. Because you've earned it, I replied simply. Not because you're family, but because you've proven you can add value to this company. That's something I had to learn the hard way. My father looked up from his contract. We were so wrong about you, about everything. Yes, I agreed. But being wrong isn't the end. It's what you learn from it that matters. I stood up, walked to my window, the same window where I'd stood the day I took control of their company. 15 years ago, you kicked out a daughter you thought was useless. Today, that daughter is offering you a chance to be part of something bigger than yourselves. The question is, are you ready to learn? They signed the contracts without hesitation, not out of desperation this time, but with a new understanding of what it means to earn success. The useless daughter they'd thrown away had become not just their savior, but their teacher. And maybe that was the greatest revenge of all. Not destroying them, but showing them a better way to build something lasting. The family that had once cast me out now looked to me for leadership. The sister who had mocked my ambitions now learned at my side. The parents who had dismissed my dreams now saw them become reality. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about being strong enough to show them how to be right. I never planned to reveal my success to my family. For years, I let them believe I was struggling with my tiny shop while quietly building one of the largest financial empires in New York. But my sister Sophia's constant mockery finally forced my hand that Christmas night. The evening started like any other family gathering at my parents' Upper East Side townhouse. Designer outfits, expensive wine, and the usual competition over who had achieved more this year. I deliberately wore a simple black dress from Target, playing my expected role as the family disappointment. Olivia, darling. My mother's voice carried that familiar note of carefully masked disappointment as I walked in. We were just discussing Sophia's latest promotion at Sterling and Pierce. She's now Senior Vice President of Operations. I smiled politely, remembering the confidential documents on my desk, showing that Sterling and Pierce was actually one of my recent acquisitions, though that particular detail wasn't public yet. Congratulations, Sophia. That's wonderful. Sophia, impeccable in her Prada suit, barely glanced up from her phone. Thanks. How's that little vintage shop of yours doing? Still making ends meet? If she only knew that the little vintage shop was just a front, a small piece of real estate I kept as cover while running Atlas Financial Group, a $50 billion investment firm that controlled nearly half of Wall Street's major players. But I just shrugged, maintaining my facade. We're doing fine. The tiny vintage clothing store in Brooklyn had started as a genuine business 10 years ago, right after I graduated from Harvard Business School. While my family pushed me to take a respectable position at a big firm like my sister, I had different plans. I used the store as my base, while quietly building Atlas Financial from the ground up. Just fine? My father raised an eyebrow, swirling his 20-year-old scotch. Sophia's division handled $3 billion in transactions last quarter alone. Maybe it's time you considered getting a real job, sweetheart. I'm sure Sophia could put in a good word for you at Sterling and Pierce. I bit back a laugh, thinking about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow where Sterling and Pierce's board would learn about their new ownership. Instead, I said, "Thanks, Dad, but I'm happy where I am." Sophia snorted delicately. Of course you are. Some people just lack ambition. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business. The irony was almost too much. Just that morning, I had closed a deal worth more than Sterling and Pierce's entire market cap. But here I sat, letting my sister lecture me about real business. Remember when Olivia actually went to Harvard Business School? My mother added, shaking her head. All that potential wasted on a little shop. At least Sophia made something of herself. The doorbell rang, interrupting what was sure to be another recap of my supposed failures. My mother brightened immediately. Oh, that must be Marcus. Sophia, your boss said he might stop by, didn't he? Marcus Evans, CEO of Sterling and Pierce, was indeed supposed to make an appearance. What my family didn't know was that he was here at my request, not Sophia's. After years of hiding my success, I had finally decided it was time for a change. The mounting takeover of Sterling and Pierce had provided the perfect opportunity. Sophia straightened her designer dress, clearly eager to impress her CEO. Yes, Marcus mentioned he tried to drop in. He's been such a wonderful mentor to me. The household staff ushered Marcus into the dining room. He was exactly as I remembered from our board meetings, tall, distinguished, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. But while my family saw Sterling and Pierce's powerful CEO, I saw a man who now answered to me. Sophia jumped up immediately. Marcus, I'm so glad you could make it. Let me introduce you to my family. But Marcus's eyes had already found me, and the look of recognition was immediate. He stepped forward, hand extended, completely ignoring Sophia's attempt at introductions. Ms. Reynolds, he said formally, using my professional name. I didn't expect to see you here tonight. The room fell silent. Sophia's smile froze on her face. Hello, Marcus, I replied calmly. Merry Christmas. Wait, Sophia interrupted, confusion evident in her voice. How do you know my sister? Marcus looked genuinely puzzled. Your sister? He glanced between us. I apologize. I had no idea Ms. Reynolds was your sister. She's the CEO of Atlas Financial Group, our new owner. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor. Sophia's face had gone completely white. And my father, he just stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Owner?" Sophia whispered. "That's impossible. Olivia runs a vintage clothing store." I smiled, finally letting my carefully maintained facade drop. "Actually, Sophia, I own quite a bit more than that, including, as of tomorrow morning, Sterling and Pierce." The vintage store had been my cover for years, allowing me to build my empire away from my family's judgmental eyes. While they mocked my little shop, I was quietly becoming one of the most powerful figures in finance. Atlas Financial Group, named after my childhood fascination with Greek mythology, now controlled over $50 billion in assets. Sophia sank back into her chair, her perfectly maintained composure crumbling. But you run a shop in Brooklyn." "The shop was a front," I explained, feeling a weight lift as I finally spoke the truth. I needed somewhere quiet to work while building Atlas. Somewhere no one would look too closely at what I was really doing. My father found his voice first. "Atlas Financial Group. My God, they're behind half the major acquisitions on Wall Street. They just bought out Richardson Brothers last month for $12 billion. $13 billion, I corrected gently. And yes, that was us. My mother's hand flew to her throat, fingering her pearls nervously. "But all these years, why didn't you tell us?" I looked around the table at their shocked faces, remembering every dismissive comment, every mockery of my little shop, every comparison to Sophia's corporate success. "Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "You were so convinced I was wasting my potential, so sure I was a failure. It was easier to let you think what you wanted while I built something on my own terms." Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly. "I should mention that the official announcement about Sterling and Pierce goes out tomorrow morning. The board approved the acquisition an hour ago." Sophia made a small choking sound. You bought my company?" "Actually," I corrected her, "I bought your company 3 months ago through a series of shell corporations. Tomorrow, it just becomes public knowledge." I turned to Marcus. "I trust everything is prepared for the transition." He nodded quickly. "Yes, Ms. Reynolds. All the paperwork is ready for your signature first thing tomorrow." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of shocked silence and awkward attempts at conversation. My family struggled to reconcile their image of me, the disappointing daughter with the little vintage shop, with the reality of who I had become. My sister barely spoke another word, her earlier confidence shattered by the revelation that her unsuccessful sister now owned her company. As I prepared to leave, my father finally approached me, his expression a mix of confusion and dawning respect. "Olivia, I don't understand. Why maintain the pretense all these years? Why let us think you were struggling?" I paused at the door, thinking carefully about my answer. "Because, Dad, success isn't about impressing others or living up to their expectations. It's about building something meaningful on your own terms. And sometimes the best way to do that is to let people underestimate you." I stepped out into the cold December night, leaving my stunned family behind. Tomorrow, the world would learn that Atlas Financial Group had acquired Sterling and Pierce. Tomorrow, my sister would discover what it meant to actually work for me. But tonight, I had finally shed the weight of my family's disapproval, and it felt better than any business deal I'd ever closed. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of the changes I had planned. The vintage shop might have been my cover story, but it had taught me something valuable. Appearances can be deceiving, and the quiet ones often hold the most power. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, another secret my family knew nothing about, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about revealing your true worth to those who never believed in you in the first place. The morning after Christmas, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of a gleaming skyscraper overlooking Manhattan. The wall-to-wall windows offered a spectacular view of the city I now partially owned, a far cry from the tiny vintage shop in Brooklyn where my family thought I spent my days. My assistant Emma walked in, tablet in hand. The Sterling and Pierce announcement goes live in 10 minutes. Also, your sister has tried to call 17 times since 6 a.m. I smiled, remembering Sophia's face when she learned the truth last night. Any messages? Mostly variations of "we need to talk," and "you can't do this to me." Emma paused. Your parents have called too. Your mother left a message saying she's planning a family dinner to discuss this situation properly. Of course she was. In my mother's world, every crisis could be solved over an elaborate dinner party. But this wasn't something that could be smoothed over with fine wine and forced smiles. Ms. Reynolds, Emma interrupted my thoughts. The Sterling and Pierce board is waiting in the main conference room, and your sister is in the lobby. I straightened my Armani suit. No more Target dresses now that my cover was blown. Send the board up. Let Sophia wait. The next hour was spent finalizing the Sterling and Pierce acquisition. The board members, who had only known me as the mysterious CEO of Atlas Financial, now treated me with a mixture of respect and fear. They had no choice. Atlas Financial now owned 67% of their company. Finally, I nodded to Emma. Send Sophia up. My sister burst into my office like a hurricane in designer clothes. She stopped short at the sight of my expansive office, her eyes widening as she took in the elegant furniture, the priceless art, and the commanding view of Manhattan. This is impossible, she whispered. Clearly not, I replied calmly, not bothering to stand. Did you need something, Sophia? She whirled to face me, her composure cracking. Need something? You bought my company. You've been lying to us for years, playing poor little Olivia with her pathetic little shop, while secretly, building an empire? I supplied. Yes, I did. And I didn't lie. I just let you believe what you wanted to believe. But why? She demanded. Why hide it? Why let us think you were a failure? I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister carefully. Because you needed to. You, Mom, Dad, you all needed to believe I was less successful than you. It made you feel better about yourselves. That's not true. No. I pulled up some files on my computer. Let's see. In the past 5 years, you've mentioned my little shop exactly 147 times in family gatherings. Mom has suggested I get a real job 89 times, and you've used the words wasted potential in reference to me at least 50 times. Sophia's face flushed. You've been keeping count? I keep track of everything, Sophia. It's how I built this company. It's how I knew Sterling and Pierce would be the perfect acquisition. And it's how I knew exactly when to reveal the truth. She sank into one of my visitor chairs, her designer dress crumpling. So what happens now? Are you going to fire me? I smiled. Fire you? No, Sophia. I'm promoting you. Her head snapped up. What? You're good at your job, I acknowledged. Your division has shown consistent growth. I'm making you Executive Vice President of Global Operations. Hope flickered across her face. Really? With one condition. I leaned forward. You report directly to me. Every decision, every major move, it goes through me first. Think you can handle having your little sister as your boss? The hope in her eyes dimmed slightly. For the first time in our lives, the power dynamic had shifted completely. No more mockery, no more condescension. Now she had to answer to the sister she'd spent years looking down on. I'll need to think about it, she managed. Take all the time you need, I replied smoothly. The position is open until tomorrow morning. After that, I'll find someone else. She stood up shakily, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. As she reached the door, she paused. Olivia, that vintage shop, why keep it? Now that everyone knows the truth. Because I like it, I said simply. It reminds me of where I started, and it keeps me grounded. Success isn't just about corner offices and billion-dollar deals, Safia. Sometimes it's about staying true to yourself, even when everyone else thinks you're wrong. After she left, Emma brought in my afternoon schedule. Your parents' dinner invitation. Should I decline? I thought about it for a moment. The old Olivia would have made an excuse, avoided the confrontation. But I wasn't hiding anymore. Accept it, I decided. But make sure they know I'll be coming directly from the office. Let's see how they handle having the real me at their dinner table. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and calls. News of the Sterling and Pierce acquisition had hit the financial world like a bomb. Atlas Financial Group was now officially one of the most powerful firms on Wall Street, and I was no longer the shadowy figure behind it. As I prepared to leave for my parents' dinner, I received one final message from Safia. I accept the position, but this isn't over. I smiled, slipping my phone into my designer bag. Of course it wasn't over. This was just the beginning. My family had spent years underestimating me, dismissing my choices, mocking my supposed failure. Now they would learn exactly what I was capable of. The vintage shop in Brooklyn might have been my cover story, but Atlas Financial was my true legacy. And now that my family knew the truth, it was time to show them just how far their disappointing daughter had really come. I stepped into my private elevator, heading down to where my driver waited. Tonight's dinner would be interesting. No more hiding. No more pretending to be less than I was. It was time for my family to meet the real Olivia Reynolds, CEO of Atlas Financial Group and owner of half of Wall Street. And something told me they weren't ready for what that really meant. My driver pulled up to my parents' townhouse precisely at 7. This time, I didn't try to blend in. My Chanel suit and Louboutin heels announced exactly who I was. Not the daughter they'd dismissed for years, but the powerful CEO I'd become. The family butler, who now knew I could buy and sell this house 100 times over, opened the door with a deep bow. Ms. Reynolds, your family is waiting in the dining room. I could hear heated whispers as I approached. They fell silent when I entered. My mother, father, and Safia sat around the massive dining table, looking like they'd been caught plotting something, which, knowing them, they probably had. Olivia, my mother managed, her voice strained. You look different. Amazing what wearing your real clothes can do, I replied, taking my seat. No more Target dresses needed. My father cleared his throat. We've been discussing the situation, and we think. The situation? I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. You mean my success? My company? The fact that I'm now Safia's boss. About that, Safia cut in. I've been thinking about the position you offered. The position isn't negotiable, I said firmly. You either accept it on my terms, or you find somewhere else to work. Though good luck explaining to other firms why you left a promotion at Atlas Financial. My mother's hands fluttered nervously with her napkin. Darling, there's no need to be so aggressive. We're family. Family? I laughed softly. Was it family when you mocked my little shop for years? When you compared me to Sophia at every opportunity? When you told everyone who would listen that I'd wasted my Harvard degree? We were trying to motivate you, my father argued, to push you to achieve more. No, I corrected him. You were trying to force me into your version of success. But here's what you never understood. I had my own plan. While you were focused on titles and appearances, I was building something real. The first course arrived, expensive wine, perfect salmon, all designed to smooth over family tensions. But I wasn't interested in pretending anymore. Do you know why I kept the vintage shop? I asked, watching them pick at their food. It wasn't just a cover. It was a reminder of what really matters. While you were all chasing status and recognition, I was learning about real value, about seeing worth in things others overlooked. But why hide it? My mother pressed. Why let us believe you were struggling? Because you needed to, I said simply. Your whole worldview depended on having someone to look down on. The successful parents, the perfect daughters Sophia, and poor struggling Olivia. It made you feel better about yourselves. Sophia flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone, opened my notes. Would you like me to read some of your comments from the past few years? The ones about my waste of potential? Or maybe the time you told your friends I was still finding myself while you were building a real career? Enough, my father interrupted. What do you want, Olivia? Money? Power? You clearly have both now. I set down my fork, looked each of them in the eye. What I want is acknowledgement, not of my success. I don't need your validation for that. I want you to acknowledge how you treated me, how you belittled my choices, dismissed my path, and made me feel less than because I didn't follow your script. Silence fell over the table. My mother's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her discomfort. My father's usual authority seemed to have deserted him. And Sophia, she looked lost, her world turned upside down. Finally, my father spoke. We were wrong. Yes, I agreed. You were. But you have to understand, my mother jumped in. We only wanted what was best for you. No, I corrected her gently. You wanted what looked best to others. There's a difference. I stood up, smoothing my designer suit. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Atlas Financial is acquiring another firm, one that makes Sterling and Pierce look small in comparison. Sophia, I expect you in my office at 8 sharp. We have a lot of work to do. Olivia, please, my mother called as I turned to leave. Can't we just go back to the way things were? I paused at the door. No, we can't. But we can move forward if you're willing to accept me as I am, not as you wish I was. And if we can't, my father asked quietly, then you'll miss out on knowing who I really am, I replied. Your choice. I left them sitting there, surrounded by their expensive dinner and shattered assumptions. My driver was waiting outside, ready to take me back to my penthouse apartment. Rough night? He asked, seeing my expression. Actually, I smiled. It was perfect. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find Sophia already waiting. She looked different, humbler somehow, without her usual armor of superiority. I've been thinking, she said before I could speak, about everything you said last night. You were right. I gestured for her to continue. I was jealous, she admitted. Not of your success. I didn't know about that. But of your confidence. Your ability to follow your own path without caring what anyone thought. I always needed their approval. And now I'd like to learn from you. Really learn, not just accept the promotion. If you're willing to teach me. I studied my sister, seeing for the first time, not my lifelong rival, but someone who might actually be ready to grow. First lesson, I said, sitting down at my desk. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Over the next few months, things changed. Not dramatically. Years of family dynamics don't disappear overnight. But slowly, steadily, the relationships shifted. My parents stopped trying to micromanage my life and actually started listening when I spoke. My mother replaced her subtle digs with genuine questions about my business. My father began asking for my advice on investments. Sophia worked harder than I'd ever seen her, learning the real meaning of success. She still struggled sometimes with reporting to her younger sister, but she was trying. That counted for something. The vintage shop in Brooklyn. I kept it, spending Saturday afternoons there when I needed a break from being CEO. It remained my sanctuary, a reminder of where I came from and what I'd built. 1 year after that fateful Christmas dinner, I hosted the family holiday party in my penthouse apartment. No more pretense, no more hiding, no more uncomfortable digs about my career choices. As I watched my family mingle with New York's financial elite, I caught Sophia speaking to a junior analyst. My sister, she was saying, taught me that real success isn't about titles or appearances. It's about building something meaningful, something true to who you are. I smiled, sipping my champagne. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about showing them a better way to be right. The vintage shop's bell still rings every day, its small space filled with carefully curated pieces and stories waiting to be discovered. And 50 floors above it, in a gleaming office tower, sits the empire that proves success comes in many forms. You just have to be brave enough to follow your own path, even when everyone else thinks you're lost. As I looked out over the city lights that night, I realized something important. My family had spent years trying to fix what they saw as my failures, never realizing that their definition of success was what needed fixing all along. Now they knew the truth, not just about my business empire, but about the strength it takes to stay true to yourself in a world that constantly tries to make you someone else. And that, more than any amount of money or power, was the real measure of my success. The mahogany boardroom table gleamed under soft lighting as I watched my career crumble. My sister Victoria stood at the head of the table, her perfectly manicured hands planted firmly on its surface, her expression a mask of false regret. I'm Madeline Carter, and this was the day my sister decided to destroy me. As the new CEO of Carter Technologies, Victoria's voice carried across the stunned silence. My first action must be to address the inefficiencies in our leadership team. Her eyes locked onto mine, cold and calculating. Madeline, your performance as Chief Innovation Officer has been consistently disappointing. I sat perfectly still, my face betraying nothing as 2 decades of memory flashed through my mind. Dad building Carter Technologies from nothing, teaching us both the business from the ground up, making us promise to always protect his legacy together. Dad had been gone just 3 months, and already Victoria was breaking that promise. The numbers don't lie, she continued, clicking through her presentation. Your R&D department has failed to produce any significant breakthroughs in the past year. Our competitors are leaving us behind. What Victoria conveniently failed to mention was that I'd spent that year developing something revolutionary, something that could transform Carter Technologies from a mid-sized tech company into an industry leader. But the prototype was still in my private lab, waiting for the perfect moment to unveil it. A moment that would never come now. Therefore, Victoria straightened her designer blazer, effective immediately. Madeline Carter is terminated from her position at Carter Technologies. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Some had known me since I was a child, had watched me grow up in these halls, but none spoke up. Victoria had spent months consolidating her power, replacing key members with her own allies. "You can't do this," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "I own 30% of this company." Victoria's smile turned predatory. "Actually, according to Dad's will, you own 20%. The board owns 30, and I control the remaining 50. The vote has already been taken." She slid a document across the table. "The board has agreed to buy out your shares at current market value." I glanced at the number. It was insultingly low. Victoria had been deliberately tanking our stock price for months, all part of her plan. "And if I refuse, then we'll freeze you out. No vote, no influence, no salary. You'll be nothing but a silent partner watching from the sidelines." She shrugged elegantly. "Take the money, Maddie. It's more than you deserve." I stood slowly, gathering my things with deliberate care. The weight of my private lab keycard seemed to burn in my pocket. The key to everything Victoria thought I'd failed to create. "You know what's funny, Victoria?" I said, pausing at the door. "Dad always said you were the smart one, the ruthless one, the one who would do anything to win." "He was right," she smirked. "No," I smiled, thinking of the prototype waiting in my lab, of the patents filed under my private holding company, of the plans I'd made for exactly this scenario. He wasn't. I walked out of Carter Technologies for the last time, my heels clicking against marble floors that had once felt like home. Security followed, making sure I didn't take anything but my personal belongings. They needn't have bothered. Everything important was already gone. In my car, I pulled out my phone and made a call I'd hoped I'd never have to make. "Ms. Zhang, it's Madeline Carter. Remember that contingency plan we discussed? It's time." Jessica Zhang, the most ruthless venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, had been waiting for this call. "Excellent. I'll have the paperwork ready in an hour. Your prototype performs as promised." I smiled, thinking of the revolutionary AI system I'd spent the past year perfecting. The one Victoria thought didn't exist. Better than promised. And Victoria just made it available for the highest bidder. She fired you. "Yes, and severely undervalued my shares." Jessica's laugh was sharp and appreciative. "Perfect. That makes the hostile takeover much easier. Are you ready to play hardball, Madeline?" I looked back at the Carter Technologies building, where Victoria was probably already redecorating my office. More than ready. Victoria wants to talk about disappointing performance. Let's show her what disappointment really looks like. That night, in my penthouse apartment, I reviewed the documents Jessica had sent over. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. My private company, Phoenix Innovations, would partner with Zhang Ventures to launch a competing product. Then, using the market chaos that would ensue, we'd start quietly buying up Carter Technologies stock. Victoria thought she'd won by forcing me to sell my shares at a discount. She had no idea she just made her biggest mistake. My phone buzzed. A text from our mother. "How could you let this happen?" Victoria was just trying to protect the company. I didn't bother responding. Mom had always favored Victoria, excusing her ruthless behavior as good business sense while criticizing my more innovative approach. Instead, I opened my laptop and began typing an email to Carter Technology's biggest clients. They deserved to know that the company's most innovative products, the ones they'd been eagerly awaiting, were about to come from a different source. Victoria wanted a war. Fine. But she was about to learn that sometimes the quietest soldier is the most dangerous. And I had been very, very quiet. My prototype sat in its secure case, ready to revolutionize the tech industry. Victoria thought she'd stripped me of everything. She didn't realize she'd actually set me free. In 3 months, I would walk back into that boardroom. But this time, I wouldn't be the one getting fired. This time, I would own everything. The next 3 months transformed everything. While Victoria was busy redecorating my old office at Carter Technologies, I was building her worst nightmare. My new headquarters occupied the top floor of a gleaming skyscraper across town. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of Carter Technologies' building, a constant reminder of what I was fighting for. The prototype testing is complete, Dr. Marcus Chen, my lead engineer, announced as he entered my office. It's exceeding all benchmarks. Zhang Ventures is impressed. I smiled, reviewing the data on my tablet. The AI system I developed would revolutionize how companies handle data processing. It was exactly what our biggest clients had been begging for, and exactly what Victoria thought I'd failed to create. "What's the word from Carter Technologies?" I asked, though I already knew. I had sources everywhere now. Marcus grinned. "Chaos. Their stock dropped another 15% this morning. Clients are jumping ship left and right. Victoria's trying to fast-track a competing product, but all their best engineers now work for us," I finished. I'd made sure to hire them within days of my departure, offering better pay and creative freedom. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Victoria's struggling. The board is asking questions. Please stop whatever you're doing." I deleted it without responding. Victoria had made her choice 3 months ago. Now she could live with the consequences. Jessica Zhang strode into my office, her sharp suit and sharper smile indicating good news. "We just acquired another 5% of Carter Technologies through our shell companies. That puts us at 18% total." I nodded, pulling up the ownership breakdown on my screen. Victoria still thinks she's untouchable with her 50% stake. She hasn't noticed the ground shifting under her feet. Speaking of shifting, Jessica settled into a chair. Your old friend, James Morrison from the board, reached out. He's ready to flip his voting shares to our side. Apparently, Victoria's latest temper tantrum in the boardroom was the last straw. I remembered James. He'd been one of my father's closest friends and had never approved of Victoria's hostile management style. His 10% stake would be crucial. "Perfect timing," I said. "The product launch is scheduled for next week. Once we announce Phoenix Innovations' new AI system, Carter Technologies' stock will plummet." Jessica finished, her smile predatory. "And we'll be ready to buy." The product launch was everything we planned for. I stood on stage at the tech industry's biggest conference, presenting the AI system that would change everything. In the audience, I spotted several Carter Technologies board members, their expressions growing increasingly panicked as they realized what they'd lost. Victoria sat in the front row, her face a mask of fury as she watched me unveil the innovation she'd claimed I couldn't create. When I announced that Phoenix Innovations had already signed contracts with 3 of Carter Technologies' biggest clients, she stormed out. The next morning, Carter Technologies stock dropped 40%. Your sister's online one, my assistant announced later that day. She sounds upset. I let it ring through to voicemail. Victoria had never bothered to listen to me. Now it was my turn not to listen to her. Her message was exactly what I expected. Threats, accusations, demands to know how I'd stolen her clients. She still didn't understand that she'd driven them away herself, with her focus on short-term profits over innovation. The hostile takeover proceeded exactly as planned. As Carter Technologies' stock price fell, our shell companies kept buying. Board members, seeing the writing on the wall, began selling their shares, conveniently to buyers we controlled. Victoria fought back, of course. She tried to rush out competing products, but without the innovative talent she'd driven away, they were pale imitations. She attempted to sue me for patent infringement, but all my innovations were legally protected under Phoenix Innovations. She even tried to turn our parents against me. Not that she needed to. They'd always taken her side. But this time, it didn't matter. I wasn't the quiet, accommodating sister anymore. 2 weeks before the final board meeting, I received an unexpected visitor. James Morrison stood in my office, looking both impressed and slightly amused. "Your father would be proud," he said, looking around at what I'd built. "He always said you were the real innovator. Victoria just couldn't see it." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that why you're here? To tell me Dad would approve?" He shook his head. "I'm here to warn you. Victoria knows she's losing control. She's planning something desperate for the board meeting." "Let her try," I said calmly. "Everything's already in motion." James studied me for a moment. "You know, she always thought you were the weak one, the quiet one who would never fight back." I smiled, thinking of all the quiet moments I'd spent planning this very outcome. That was her first mistake. The night before the board meeting, I stood in my office looking across at the Carter Technologies building. Tomorrow, everything would change. My phone buzzed with a final text from Victoria. "Whatever you're planning, it won't work. This is my company." I didn't bother responding. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the final numbers one last time. Through our various shell companies and allied board members, we now controlled 49% of Carter Technologies. Victoria still thought her 50% stake made her invincible. She didn't know about the final piece of the puzzle, the 2% of shares Dad had left in a trust, with very specific instructions about how they could be voted, instructions that would be revealed tomorrow. As I gathered my things to leave, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different now, stronger, sharper, more like the CEO I'd become. Victoria had tried to erase me from our father's legacy. Instead, she'd given me the push I needed to build my own. Tomorrow, I would walk into that boardroom not as the sister she betrayed, but as the woman who now controlled her fate. And this time, there would be no false regret, no fake sympathy. Just pure, cold, corporate justice. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived early at Carter Technologies. The security guards, who still remembered me from my childhood days running through these halls, nodded respectfully as I passed. They'd seen enough corporate drama to know which way the wind was blowing. The boardroom looked exactly as it had 3 months ago, down to the gleaming mahogany table where Victoria had tried to destroy my career. But today, different papers waited at each seat, documents that would change everything. Victoria burst in at 8:55 a.m., her usual confidence slightly frayed around the edges. She faltered for just a moment when she saw me sitting calmly at the table. You're not supposed to be here, she snapped. This is a closed board meeting. Actually, James Morrison spoke up from his seat. Ms. Carter was officially invited. As the CEO of Phoenix Innovations, she has some rather important business to discuss. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she took in the room. Several of her most reliable board allies were conspicuously absent, replaced by faces she didn't recognize, representatives from our shell companies. "What's going on?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Where's Theodore and Patricia?" "They sold their shares," I said softly, "along with most of your other allies. Check your phone, Victoria." The SEC filings went public this morning. She grabbed her phone, her face paling as she scrolled through the notifications. This is impossible. I control 50%. 50% isn't enough when the rest of the board votes as a bloc. Jessica Zhang stood in the doorway, her presence making Victoria step back involuntarily. "And your leadership has been, shall we say, less than inspiring lately." Victoria spun to face me, realization dawning. You've been buying up shares through shell companies. That's why the stock price kept falling. You were manipulating the market." "No," I corrected her. "The stock price fell because you drove away our best talent, alienated our biggest clients, and failed to innovate. We just helped the market recognize your true value." "It doesn't matter," she said, but her voice wavered. "I still control 50%. You can't outvote me." "About that," James pulled out a sealed envelope. "Your father left certain instructions with the trust that holds 2% of company shares. Instructions that could only be revealed under specific circumstances." Victoria sank into a chair as James began reading. "In the event that either of my daughters attempts to forcibly remove the other from the company, these shares are to be voted with the daughter who demonstrates true innovation and leadership. The trust has reviewed both sisters' actions," James continued. Victoria's hostile removal of Madeleine, followed by Madeleine's successful launch of groundbreaking technology through Phoenix Innovations, makes the decision clear. I stood slowly. The 2% votes with me, combined with the shares we've acquired and our allied board members, that gives us effective control of Carter Technologies. "No," Victoria whispered. "Dad wouldn't." "Dad knew exactly who you were," I said quietly. "He knew you'd try something like this eventually. That's why he left an insurance policy." "The first vote," Jessica announced, "is to remove Victoria Carter from her position as CEO, effective immediately." "You can't do this." Victoria shot to her feet. "This is my company." "Second vote," I continued as if she hadn't spoken, "is to approve the merger between Carter Technologies and Phoenix Innovations, with Madeleine Carter as CEO of the combined entity." "All in favor?" James asked. Hands rose around the table. Victoria watched helplessly as her empire crumbled. "The votes are recorded," Jessica stated formally. "Victoria, you'll need to clear out your office by the end of the day. And if I refuse, then I'll have security escort you out," I said calmly. "Just like you did to me 3 months ago." She stared at me, tears of rage forming in her eyes. "I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you chose power over family." I'd pressed the intercom. "Security, please escort Ms. Carter to her office to collect her belongings." As Victoria was led away, our mother burst into the boardroom. "What have you done? How could you do this to your sister?" I met her gaze steadily. "The same way you both did it to me. The difference is, I did it legally and ethically, and I did it better." Over the next year, the merged company flourished. My AI technology revolutionized the industry, just as I'd planned. Stock prices soared, clients returned, and innovation once again became our driving force. Victoria tried to fight back, of course. She attempted lawsuits, leaked stories to the press, even tried to start a competing company. But without Dad's name or money behind her, she discovered just how hard it was to succeed on merit alone. Our parents took her side. Naturally, holiday dinners became a thing of the past, but I didn't mind. I had built my own family now, a team of brilliant innovators who valued creation over destruction. One year to the day after the takeover, I sat in my office, the same office where Victoria had once reigned. A familiar figure appeared in my doorway. "Miss Carter?" My assistant looked uncertain. "Your sister is here." Victoria stood behind him, looking different, humbler. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a simpler, more authentic version of my sister. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I studied her for a moment, then nodded. Closed the door. She sat across from me, fidgeting with her purse. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this past year. About Dad, about the company, about what you built while I was busy trying to tear you down. And you were right. About everything." She took a deep breath. I wanted to control Dad's legacy so badly that I forgot what that legacy was supposed to be about. Innovation, creation, building something meaningful. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. "I'm not asking for my job back," she continued. "I don't deserve it. But I've been developing some ideas of my own. Small stuff, nothing like your AI system. But it's mine, and it's honest." She pulled out a business plan, sliding it across my desk. "I'm not asking for money or support. I wanted you to be the first to see it." I picked up the proposal, scanning it thoughtfully. It was good, genuinely good. A small tech solution for local businesses, the kind of thing that could help real people. "You did this yourself?" She nodded. No shortcuts, no writing on Dad's name. Just me, learning to code in my apartment, trying to build something real. I was quiet for a long moment, remembering all the times I'd wished for my sister to understand what real innovation meant. "There's a small business incubator program starting next month," I said finally. "Independent from Carter Technologies, but I mentor there sometimes. Submit your proposal. If it's accepted, you'll get seed funding and guidance." "Really?" Hope flickered in her eyes. "On one condition." I held up a finger. "You earn it. No special treatment. No family connections. Just your idea and your work ethic." She stood, straightening her shoulders. "That's all I'm asking for. A fair chance to prove myself." As she turned to leave, I called after her. "Victoria?" She paused at the door. "Dad would be proud. Not of what happened before, but of what you're trying to do now." A small smile curved her lips, not the predatory smirk I remembered, but something more genuine. "Thanks, Maddie. But I think he'd be prouder of you." After she left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city where both our dreams were taking shape. Victoria had needed to lose everything to learn what real success meant, and I had needed to lose my place in the family to find my true strength. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about building something so magnificent that they're forced to change just to keep up. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that change creates something better than revenge. It creates understanding. As for me, I kept Dad's old nameplate on my desk, right next to my own. A reminder that legacies aren't inherited. They're built, one innovation at a time. And I was just getting started.